Hey everybody, this is Carmelle Kemp, and today on Creating Life Consciously, I am thrilled to speaking with Greg. Greg is based in Vancouver, BC, Canada, and quite simply, Greg likes to be helpful. He draws upon his experience in bioenergy healing, heart-brain coherence training, spiritual psychology, meditation, and the use of frequency technology. He provides helpful writings on Facebook and was recently published in The Brave, Ascending Human Consciousness. He runs local Qigong circles and meditation circles, and he is currently guiding people through the daily lessons in the year-long workbook of A Course in Miracles. He is sometimes seen around town raising vibes, playing his jumbie drum.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Greg, again, for being here. And let's see where we're going to go and what we're going to explore.
Mm-hmm.
You and I know each other a little bit, I would say, from a few years ago and had a few interesting experiences. And, I get to see your posts and what you're creating. So let's just sort of dive in a little bit, just sort of a broad overview of sort of where you came from, a little bit of the navigation. I know that you've been into the Course in Miracles for quite some time, and about creating life consciously.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, for me, I think it started in high school. Grade 11. I was normal, whatever that means. And then there was an invitation to go to a free introduction to meditation course for like 6 weeks, offered by Sri Chinmoy in his school. And I attended, and the first meditation. And I've been in that world, playing in that world ever since. It's just opened up a depth of peace, a sense of home, deep familiarity, like the bliss. The feeling was unlike anything I've experienced at that point. Right, and so it began. It's like, okay, well, what do I want to do in life from this point forward? This. What's this? How do I do that? Like, what do I take in school? Right? And so the closest things were psychology, spiritual psychology, philosophy, and that's what I pursued basically for all those years. Just wanting to go home, go home. Yeah, so that's been the journey on and on. And I mean, I've been on the spiritual path of awareness, off ever since.
Yeah, yeah, and good for you to start so young.
Just happened.
You know, with some people it does, and to continue on that and to dive deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Maybe I started a little bit late, but I had some really cool, unexplainable, mystical experiences when I was younger, and they didn't really scare me. Some did, like going into the basement and feeling other things happening and not being able to have anybody to talk to. But as I got older and really dove into it, it didn't, freak me out, and it was about diving deeper into the unknown and trying to. I don't think you can really ever really understand it, but you can experience it anyway. For me, um, let's talk about. I know that you've got the bioenergy healing, and I want to touch on a lot of stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating. Um, so let's talk about the bioenergy healing a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, and maybe shed a little light on that for our listeners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so back when I was still younger, I explored everything. Reiki, and then kind of left that. Fast forward to about 8 years ago, I moved to the West Coast here and kind of restarted life. Restarted, and came from the technical field, the video productions, the creative artistry, and I left all that to shift into all things consciousness and energy healing and just getting ready for this next chapter. this next chapter of service in a very different sense, in kind of a humanitarian service now versus the technical sitting at a computer editing. And right within my field, I just started attracting. So here in Vancouver, there's no shortage of all things consciousness. And so right away, there's like, oh, wow, I discovered an opportunity. There's a free seminar for energy healing, bioenergy healing. So I attended that, dove in immediately. There was an instant recognition. There was an instant passion. Like when you feel the yes, it's a yes. So I dove in, and other modalities too. Also everything I can find. And like, yeah, I just resonated. There was a community here. There's definitely a thriving community around the whole bioenergy school of the energy healing. And but the immediacy of the effects too, when you do it, when you apply it, you just learn the techniques, you learn the principles, really, the energetic principles, how we're these electromagnetic beings, we're constantly emitting energy out of the hands. So we start using that. And I mean, with my partner at the time, she had a headache. Well, guess what? Boom. I apply it 30 seconds or whatever, 2 minutes later, headache's gone. Like, wow, this is incredible. Back pain, just take it out. Wow, right? So it's very practical, very tangible, very quick, very efficient. Um, so you can treat just about anything from physical, emotional, everything with varying degrees of results, of course. And yeah, so that's just the constant back pocket tool, accessible anytime, anywhere we are. Mm, I get to help people. That's one of the ways I can help people. And so everybody's got whatever different issues going on. Um, so I just use whatever's required at that time. Sometimes it's bioenergy, sometimes it's not.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about like what your personal experience and what you experienced through those learnings and through the processes and through the application of that is.
Well, we are a lot more than just physical beings. There's a whole energetic dimension to us. And that ties into the whole thing of, well, Qigong now as well. In a couple of days, I'm about to restart guiding people through Qigong. We do it outside in the park now that we have the good weather. But that's just, it's an internal level of our nature. So we are energetic beings through the bioenergy or the Qigong, anything energetic. It connects me closer to my source self, to my real self. Um, Everything overlaps. So tuning into the heart space, especially as well. So breathing through the heart. That see, I laugh right away because there it is. It's right there under the surface. Who we are as the energetic beings, as the light beings that we are. It's like you learn first of all basic techniques how to tap into that, and then once you practice and you're really familiar, it's like, oh, the energy's right there. The peace that we're all searching and chasing for, it's right here under the surface. So through all these modalities, you get in touch with basically who you really are. That's what it comes down to. And who we really are feels really good. There's no problem who we are. And then with that comes the next guidance, the next intuition, the next whatever next I'm about to say here.
Amazing. Yeah, no kidding, right? Let's dive into A Course in Miracles a little bit.
Okay.
I haven't done the complete book, but I did start it. So, and I know that you really committed to this, and so I want to dive in, or I want to have you dive into that about really what it is and what your experience with it has been.
The course came into my sphere in 2006, and the immediacy of the teachings or the ideas expressed is we're already right now complete and whole. We're free. Our intrinsic nature is our spirit is unlimited. We cannot be contained. That's amazing news because that's already a fact and accomplished right now. It's always been that way and it cannot change. So all of the seeking and chasing and processes and more workshops until one day, right? Meanwhile, under the surface, your spirit is like, I'm right here. Anytime you're ready, just tune in. It's all good, right? How long does it take to be what you already are? No,
Yeah.
no time at all. I love that with the Course in Miracles. It's so immediate. It's so immediate. It's an immediate recognition of what the truth is. What the truth is. The truth is constant. How we were originally created is how we still are. So our soul is again beautiful and perfect. We are love itself. That's how we were created, and we still are. The problem is we think we've actually changed ourselves. We've actually made mistakes. We've screwed up. We've made all sorts of errors, and we're definitely not good enough anymore. We're not good enough. Our values we're messed up. And especially people who kind of are facing dying, crossing over. There's a fear. There's a subconscious fear that what's going to happen to me on the other side? The judgment. There's judgment that's got to be coming because come on. Look at my life, how it's been. And so that's the derailment that our ego mind, our separate mind, has taken us off course, believing all of these stories we've made up. We've made up these totally dysfunctional stories that we are not perfect anymore. But back to the original, we're still constant and perfect as we were created. It's unchangeable, non-negotiable. So awareness back to here instead of these stories we made up back to here, down here. So I am whole. I am complete. I've never changed myself. I'm still innocent. The idea of innocence is a common foundational one in the Course. Innocent meaning I'm not guilty. There's nothing to be ashamed of. The shame and the guilt that rots our core identity here is very toxic, is the toxicity. So the antidote is, yeah, okay, you might have made mistakes, no problem. We make mistakes, but acknowledge it as they didn't stain your soul. They didn't ruin who you actually are. And it doesn't justify that you will now be punished and bad things will now happen to you. And, one day the great deities and God will find you and catch up with you and punish you. And so all of that is like, whoosh, that's a great story, bro. But the truth is,
Yeah.
you're still good. Still
Yeah.
love.
Absolutely, and I can grasp that. I've experienced it, but it's sure as heck easier said than done for most people, right?
Yes. Well, yeah.
So that's the tricky part because we think that this is me. The minute that I think that this is me, I'm in untruth. It's mine. It's myself. It's my mind. It's not me, right? This is a manifested creation through experiences, perceptions, thoughts, emotions, energy, emotion. And the intellect, in my experience, is where we get tangled up because the mind wants to get in the way, which is largely run by the little self that thinks that this is me, rather than infinite conscious awareness, which is really empty space, spirit, whatever you want to call it, universe, God. And so to say all of this is great, but what I've found is that until I can experience something for myself, it is a belief, which for me is not a knowing. Belief is the biggest illusion for me. Um, because in my experience, it's the little self's way of not wanting to admit that it doesn't know. And we latch on to those beliefs,
Of
which
course.
continue to create the personality traits. So I changed my own sort of internal language from belief. It's like I don't believe in anything. I either know or I don't know. And if I want to know, then I have to go and I have to explore and dive deeper to experience that. And then that, for me, teaches the mind. It kind of brings it down a little bit. Right? And so in in language and in talking about the power of A Course in Miracles, there has to be somewhere an underlying experience. Like I know that, and I'm not so familiar with it anymore. That every day there's mm, something that you say or that you do. Like, I'm not that. I'm not that wall. I'm not that window. Am I right? Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Um, what you're describing is what it also says. It says the
Mm,
same thing.
right.
The aim of the course is to have a direct personal experience. And it's very clear that we can get caught up in endless theological debates and analysis, and it doesn't do that at all.
Mm,
You can do that, but you're wasting your time. You're delaying the actual direct personal experience that this course is trying to direct us to right now. So that's why it does have a textbook with theory to get us oriented and unconfused, clarify the belief structures. But the main application is these 365 daily lessons that are trying to get us into a direct personal experience. So we feel it, we know it, exactly what you're saying, of course. Yeah.
mm. Um, did I get that one sort of piece right? Where there's a day where you go, I am not that,
No.
or is it the other way? I am
No.
that.
Which one was
I
that?
think it's right at the beginning. I didn't get far to it.
Okay, probably the meaning ones. Nothing I see means anything.
Ah, okay, that's it. I got that totally wrong. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this hanger does not actually mean anything.
Right.
This coffee doesn't actually mean anything because the problem is we have generated all of our own interpretations, which are really crappy interpretations, very disempowering, unloving, unkind interpretations suited towards the ego self, just that whole mess. So we got to unglue all of our associations and meanings we've already generated to everything. We got to unstick and undo our current understandings of everything. That's first. That's the brilliance of the Course in Miracles, actually, right? Out of all the beautiful ways a course can start, most people generally think, well, let's just dive into all the love and the light. And it's like, and we get to that. That'll come secondarily. That's later in the workbook. But first, we got to dig into the crud that we have solidified as our beliefs. We can't, a closed mind cannot learn. So we're trying to loosen, dislodge, and create space for beautiful experiences to be able to arise.
Right. I love that. Yeah, I had that totally wrong. As soon as we apply a meaning to something, we either have an attachment or love or hate to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, we've talked about my guru a little bit, said guru, and I found this even in my own experiences that when you like one thing and you dislike another, this is where we get tangled up,
Mhm.
right? Habits, patterns, tendencies tangle everything up, and that's for me what sort of can get in the way of connecting back to that source and loosening and really what we're doing is loosening the memory, getting distance from memory of the like and the dislike and the judgments,
Mhm.
good or bad. You know, if you don't
Mhm.
believe in the same thing that I do, then you must be against me, which is the concept that we started every conflict before.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, you're describing this realm of duality, polarity. There's polarity here, if
Mm-hmm.
opposites. Well, ultimately, we're all evolving to a higher perspective, a holistic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, we're all one at the spiritual level. You can't take a side if it's all one and interconnected. Everything's relating and relating and relating to each other. So less judgment, more openness and acceptance, accepting everything exactly how it is. No strong opinions. Opinions are of the ego.
Mhm.
And so we unify. It's just unity consciousness we're moving back into with the Course and with evolution in general.
Yeah, I mean, inclusivity, right? To include everything as a part of yourself. If we're just all one and there's really no individual existence, it's just all one. And being inclusive within that and getting rid of the judgment, the right and the wrong. People will say, well, how can you say that, extreme examples of rape and murder is okay? I'm not saying that it's about condonement. Um, for me, one of the things that I've learned through my experience through different teachings and through medicine is that when you largely judge another, you're judging yourself,
Mm-hmm.
number one. And we get
Yes.
back into the right and wrong. But can you, within your perception, challenge yourself to change your belief that the being or the person that behaved in a certain way? It's about looking at things, and this is a bit of a slippery slope, as whether it's appropriate for a situation and needed or if it's inappropriate. And that doesn't necessarily mean right or wrong. So to do what is needed in a situation. And then what we do is that we judge both the behavior and the person.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm trying to do and talk about is, can you shift your perception and not judge the person for their behavior and look at them somewhat separate? If their
Mm-hmm.
behavior was a manifestation of their own fear, 3D, dualistic, and still look at that being as a divine being.
Yes. Yes.
And that's difficult for a lot of people. Right?
Of
Because
course.
we lump them all into one, the behavior and the person, and the behavior was inappropriate or bad, if we look at it that way, and therefore that person must also be bad. And that's simply
Right.
not true.
Right. 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 So one of the core mantras, I guess, lessons in the Course in Miracles really makes the distinction, what you're saying, because we basically identify as a body, the body. That's all we are. That's their behave, and so the body is the one that behaves. All of the actions, negativity, we associate to them as the body, behavior. But that's not the truth of who they are. What they still are is that awareness, something much, much greater. And so that pure, loving consciousness that they actually are, we got to get in touch with that. And so if the body is misbehaving, fine. We take appropriate, non-reactive, non-judgmental, just wiser action. Just calm, steady, do what you got to do. But making that distinction between who they actually are as invisible, formless something to the physical body. I'm not a body. I'm actually free. I'm not a body. I'm actually free. So for others too, their body's misbehaving, but they are not the body. They're actually free. They are perfect. They are eternal. Yeah, that distinction is
I am
everything.
not the body, I am not the mind.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Yeah, there's
Yes.
a very, very powerful process of Kriya that basically
Yes, of
focuses on
course.
that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. But it's so fascinating because, a lot of the three-dimensional reality is dualistic by nature. It's survival based, it's fear based, it's law based. Time is linear, and none of that is true.
Right?
Higher. If you can operate this being, if you can strive for and tap into different dimensions of consciousness and operate this being from a higher dimension of consciousness, then the fear, the reptilian brain, time bent time. Time is malleable. You can bend time.
Mhm.
The polarity that we were talking about earlier, you can be aware of it, but it doesn't necessarily influence you, right? We look at polarity as being, for the best one is hot and cold. We look at them as being opposite when in fact they're actually the same thing. Their temperature, right? And so if we can use, this is the thermometer and here's cold and here's hot. At no point has cold ever just become hot. It's only separated by varying degrees. So it's temperature. And so it's the same thing. But we look at them as completely different.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and the mind is like, what? Wait, what do you mean? But from a higher dimension of consciousness that we do have to strive to tap into. It's not something that descends upon you. You have to strive to tap into those higher dimensions of consciousness and then use that and work with that divine intelligence that is flowing and allow it to flow through you in order to manifest and create the life that you want to do. And you can do that consciously or you could do it subconsciously. And I look at reaction as being subconscious. It's the way that the pattern, the old memory is running, and that but we
Yes.
can respond consciously.
Yes. Of course.
Right? To create.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes. And so responding back to what is my core identity? If I'm a person with opinions in survival mode, trying to get everything for myself, if that's my core identity, it's going to be a hard time for the rest of my life. So, what am I actually? Okay. That's better. And so, with a higher wisdom, higher perspective, understanding the higher context, it's like, oh, okay, it's not a big of a deal. I'm an eternal spirit. This is just this tiny little blip, extremely microscopic. Yeah, just back to what I actually am. That's what I. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that, but then yes, catching yourself in the moment when things come up. So you got to be self-aware, self-reflective. You got to be mindful, and then actual processes like okay, something happens. So first thing is don't react. Don't flip out. Don't knee-jerk react. And it's just a process of getting used to okay, relax. Let's start with relaxing. Take a breath. Pause. What is it? Um, I like Michael Singer, his whole surrender experiment, his whole story. He's been on my radar for a while. And so his surrender experiment, everything in life he did, basically, whatever trigger, whatever, anything comes up first, surrender. Non resistance. Drop in. Don't resist. All right, just surrender. Okay, that's good. So now the ego whole dynamic is kind of out of the way. It's kind of dissolved. That whatever charge energetically or emotionally was there, discharge that. And now the higher faculties. So life, wisdom, spirit, the divine orchestrating plan that is moving everything can now do what it's going to do. And the right response is the right response. Always. It's so much easier that way. It's a spontaneous way of living. It takes reprogramming, of course, because we're program. So everything we're talking about here is just undoing programming, conditioning, endless ways you can do that, but it is a constant effort. You're saying striving. We got to do it systematically. I mean, the Course in Miracles does that very systematically. Not one big event, not one big retreat, one workshop. Every single day, we're going to follow these instructions because we got to get a hold of this attention span and then start undoing our programming. Nothing actually I see does mean anything. I really thought it really meant that this stupid thing really is important. Okay, stop. No, it doesn't mean that. Yeah. And reprogramming, and off we go.
Yeah, yeah, deprogramming. This is just a heap of memory, right? The body is a heap of food and a heap of memory. Mm, mental impressions, what we consume, social media, TV, books, etc., or just a heap of impressions that are coming in. And so this is a heap of memory that old software is continually running. And so, a lot of people I will work with will say, well, I can't, the, the, I can't turn off the thoughts in my head. I said, you're never going to be able to, but you can get distance from it. There's a difference between mental activity, which I refer to as constantly running from the old software memory that this is, and focused attention and focused thought. So the mental activity is one thing, it's always going to be running. You can gain distance from that with practice as well, and just becoming more of an observer and not engaging. As soon as you engage or judge the mental activity, you're gone, you're down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, I want to release, I want to release, I want to release. Then stop focusing on what you want to release, because that's where the attention is. The universe is just going to give you more of that. It's energy. That's where it sees the energy. It doesn't recognize that you don't want it or you do want it. So the release, for me anyway, is just simply by focusing my attention, being conscious and aware of I have the ability to choose where to place my attention. That's the release. Everything else is gone.
Yes.
And you have to do that constantly. For me, in the beginning, 11 years ago, it was like wash, rinse, and repeat. Every 5 minutes, I was doing it. Okay, well, yep, okay, over here, over here, over here, over here.
Yeah.
It was wash, rinse, and repeat that got me into this mess in the first place. It's kind of got to be the wash, rinse, and repeat. You have to be diligent. You have to strive. Right? People think that, okay, well, I'm going to go, like you said before, have one workshop or do this a couple of times, and I want to get in touch with my spirituality. It's a way of life. It's not something that you just do for a week or 2 weeks or on a weekend. It's every day, every moment. It's work. And once you start to see the benefits and you start to experience what is happening as you shift that perception, as you start connecting more to source, and you start to witness miracles and magic, and it teaches the mind to be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll keep doing this because I get it.
Yes.
Start to get it.
Exactly. Yes. Once you have finally some glimmer of a positive experience, once you finally have a bit of peace instead of the usual angry reaction, that starts to provide you proof. It's like, oh, wow, there's something here. Wow, it actually works. And so that is the kind of stuff that builds motivation. It strengthens motivation. And then we keep going. And so we're basically reinforcing a new faith, a deeper trust. And that's when it starts to get exciting, right? It really works. My life's really changing. I feel so much better. So then your commitment just goes up. Yes, it's that snowball we got to get generated. With the program in the Course in Miracles, it starts off with very simple, very small, easy practices, minimal effort required, minimal time required, because it understands the nature of our ego and the resistance we have to truth, the resistance to awakening, and the addiction to all the patterns to stay small and weak and limited. Like, it's crazy how we're addicted to the most life-sucking things. But then, so very gently, without without pushing a sense of coercion or without trying to push us away, without asking too much at first, doesn't want to scare us away because it knows we're like these scared animals ready to flee and screw it and off we go and just abort and sabotage. We're in sabotage mode all the time. So gently and beautifully, it leads us along until eventually there's asks a little bit more. Okay, now we're going to do a couple more practices throughout the day and a bit more, right? And it's a year long. So it's not just like a quick 30-day life transformation or 7 days to change your life. 365 days is a long time to really start to get at the core of reprogramming your conditioning. And at some points, once it really picks up later, okay, so now up to 6 or 7 times an hour pause briefly and just recall the thought for the day, right? Every 10 minutes you're doing that. So just to add to what you're saying, yes, if we're reprogramming, it's a full commitment. Like we're restructuring our neuroplasticity, the neurons, the whole pathways in our nervous system. It takes repetition, basically repetition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wash, rinse, and repeat. It just has to be. And ongoing. Always. You know, plant medicine has taught me a lot. Teach me a lot. And, you know, now from a different perspective, just sort of being in ceremony for myself, but, you know, working as a shaman and guiding other people into that. But, and I've learned different, you know, processes that shamanically that I work with through that. And then having been initiated by Sadhguru about 5 years ago, I do 4 hours of sadhana a day,
Mm.
right? And I know, and sometimes when I'm holding a retreat and people are here for medicine, I don't have the bandwidth or the time to always do the full um, series of kriyas that I do. Mind you, I'm in medicine, but I do notice it. Even I've been doing it, what, 5 years, right? So I understand now my body, my everything here, my energetic system knows it. It's familiar
Mm.
with it. And
Yeah.
when I don't do it, I notice it. I definitely notice it. And so that's also teaching. That's the proof. That's like, this is a daily process, right?
Yes. Yes.
And and you know, it's funny. One I had actually one of my apprentices here about a year ago for a retreat, and one night he looked at me and he says, "What's your end game?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, you know, what's your end game? You're going to Peru. You're doing medicine and holding retreats. You're working online and this and that." Says, "The only end game that I have is to do enough of my sadhana, enough of my work, to burn as much karma as I possibly can, that I don't come back. I'm stopping the cycle. That's my end game. That when I exit this body, it does not re-enter. It does not re-embody." One end game. How I get there, what happens in between, what I do for a living, I'll let that unfold. That's the
Mm-hmm. Sure, right. That makes sense. So, in other words, to describe it, is your end game is to end personal suffering and that
yeah,
whole loop of problem and
yeah,
another problem forever, permanently.
yeah,
Because as long
yeah,
as we're on Earth here, we're still. So, basically, you're talking about graduation. We're up
exactly.
leveling to the next level, where at the
Yeah,
non-duality level, we don't suffer. We're free.
no,
And then you go on to whatever's next. I can't tell you, but it's
exactly.
beautiful.
Yeah, life and life and life. There is no such thing as death, right? What we call death. I mean, it's just the exiting of this. I mean, this is on loan from Pachamama. This is a heap of food, right? This is on loan. It's a terrific organism. The intelligence here is amazing. Nobody's just ever bothered to read the manual. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
it's on loan. This is on loan. It's not me, it's mine. And it's a heap of food, and Pachamama, Mother Earth, is going to demand that loan back in full at some point. And so what I am as my true nature, exit this body, I want to make sure that I have worked with the karmic structure enough that it's gone so far out with the distance of the memory. I mean, karma is action. It's neither good or bad. It's more over the residual impact of memory. So if I have a regret, a remorse, a guilt, or a shame, then that attachment and that karmic structure is going to be a lot closer. And so, how my guru explains it is that if we can gain distance from that memory or karmic structure and blow that bubble so far out that the sheath of it becomes so thin and it's so far away from us that when we do exit this body, the karmic structure that is still intact, that basically causes us to re embody only, and not consciously, by the way, only subconsciously through habit
Mm.
pattern tendencies, it seeks another womb. And it doesn't do it consciously. It does it completely by habit. And then I burn enough of that, that when that bubble pops, then I'm just on to a different dimension of life that doesn't exist here on this
Hmm. Yeah, that's
planet.
freedom.
Yeah,
The,
yeah,
the goal is freedom. So that's one way to describe it. Absolute freedom. Back to our true nature without the false made up nature that we've made up. Because I mean, we're welcome to stay here and keep repeating on and on. This is not a new process. We've already been doing this for God knows how many eons and eons. So you're welcome to stay and keep at the grind and stay in the swamp as long as you want and try to tidy up the swamp and rearrange the furniture in the swamp. Or you can move on because
right?
there's levels. We're time to
Yeah,
ascend. We're graduating here. Come on, kids.
yeah, up
Have you
level.
had
Oh,
enough
yeah,
yet?
up level. Oh, I know. And it's, in some days, I mean, even for me still, I'll admit, it's like, oh my God, it's tiresome. But that's when my little self gets in the way. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's in the corner, it has a little pity party and it pouts. And I'm like, no, remember, surrender,
Yeah. Yeah.
surrender,
Yeah.
surrender. And I think, oh, I finally surrendered. And then the universe goes, oh, and I'll go, oh, fuck. Finally switched it. I'm like, okay, guess okay. There's more. There's more.
I have done it.
Yeah, right.
Careful.
Yeah,
No,
when
no,
I'll know when I've done it because then there's going to be no more, right? So it's
no.
like as long as I'm still in this body and I think I've done it, no,
Right.
no,
As long as you still have a story that you're very invested in, then
exactly.
you're still in the story.
Yeah,
No matter
yeah.
how wonderful your story is. So it's
Oh,
just
I
like,
know, right?
no story. Here's what happened. Here's what's happening again. They're doing it to me. No story. No,
Yeah.
no, not just drop it. So out of the whole intellectual mind, out of the whole imaginative mind, back to a presence. And a presence
Mm-hmm.
is very calm. There's no problem. There's no stories. Like anything that triggers and come up, no, ignore it out of existence. Ignore it out of
Mm-hmm.
existence. Because true reality, our true nature, there's nothing to really explain and talk about. Now, it's not that some people might think it's kind of boring. Where's the passion? Where's the excitement? I want to adventure. So wait, there's more, right? Because out of that storytelling and the defensiveness and how am I going to come back and what am I going to say to that person next time? So out of that non-story, there's that presence. And the presence of nature is very freeing. It's very peaceful, energetic. It's inspiring. It's lively. It's energizing. So then you actually do things and you do say things, but it's coming from a whole different energetic space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much more fun, so much more easier, so many fewer problems. So that's the inspired way of living now. We're still doing things in the world. I'm still very much in the world, but I'm no longer coming from that anxious mental defensiveness place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It is surrender, flow, faith, devotion. Here Peru it's a magical place. I've traveled to many places, and to walk through nature here and through the mountains in devotion, in absolute love and devotion. There's that grace,
Mm.
and sometimes it's moments of grace, sometimes it's a day of grace, sometimes it's longer than that, like weeks. And then a tree will come along
Yeah.
and then we drop back down into it. But to walk through nature, I mean, nature is just, it's the divine. Everything is divine. Walk with devotion and walk with beauty and receive. And you know, you have a hard time with receiving. God knows I did at the beginning of this journey because I just wasn't used to it in my life.
Hmm.
I wasn't used to receiving. I didn't know how to be loved and put walls and barriers up and thinking it would protect me, but that just created a prison for myself. And so to receive and to walk in devotion and understanding the relationship that you have even with plants and trees. And I'll walk sometimes and in such gratitude and devotion because the tree is giving me life, air, breath, and the carbon dioxide I'm breathing back out is feeding it. And there's this relationship. And I think that if we can start to understand the relationship and the connection that we have, not just to nature, but to one another, then we can lessen the judgment little bit by little bit and little bit by little bit. Then move into those states of grace and to receive that grace. And in those moments and those times, what I find is that there's really no decisions to be made. I just know.
Mm.
It's about
Yeah.
becoming, we talk about free will and that choice is freedom, and that's true. But what I've also found that in some of those moments of immense grace is that it's choiceless. I just know. There's no choice to be made.
Yeah. There's a spontaneity that arises and guides and leads everything. Spontaneity. That's the wisdom. That's the Tao. The Tao carries and moves everything. The only choice we do have is, do we choose to go with the choiceless, with the Tao? Do we choose to surrender our little needs, our ego self, and point ourselves back to the sunlight? Orient ourselves. What do we actually want? Oh, yes. Awakening, truth, peace, the flow, the Tao. So it's just keeping our orientation in the correct direction.
Right? Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, right. Remind myself, where am I going? Oh, yeah, right. This is nothing. This is an illusion. The triggers are like, okay, well, we're okay. Well, yeah, well, then we go through the whole process with that. But one of my favorite quotes from Rumi is, "Why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open?"
Yeah.
It's
Right?
you know, yeah,
Because we got very comfortable being in bondage, or Plato's cave allegory, right? We've been in that
mm,
cave, uh, bound up, and all we see is a dark cave, but with the lights behind us, casting shadows in front of us on the wall. So we see shadows and moving images on the wall, and that's all we've known our whole lives since birth. This is reality. This is all there is. There's obviously nothing, like, come on, this is just all there is. Until one day one of the prisoners is freed or escapes, and they go out and they find out, wow, there's a cave, there's a door, we're inside a cave, and there's beautiful warm sunlight and beauty outside. And he's like blown away. So at first it's actually painful because the light is so far too bright than they're accustomed to. So he eventually gets used to it. He's free. He discovered, oh my God, there's freedom out here. So he comes back in and tells the other people tied up. He's so excited, and they want nothing to do with him. You're crazy. What are you talking about? This, come on, right? You're insane. Because we're comfortable, and this is all we know, and stay small, just stay in your place, follow the rules. It's just all we know.
yeah, yeah. This is me. I'm this. I'm that. I talk like this. I behave like this. It's fascinating because what we're truly seeking is freedom, and we continually put ourselves into different boxes. Um, and I may get skewered for this from a few people, but one of the things that has kind of irked me a little bit,
Death has?
admittedly, is no, it's just that right now there's so much like, oh, I identify as this, um, I identify as that, and as soon as you identify as something,
Yeah.
you're in untruth. So I try as much as I can to not identify as anything because I am the cosmos, I am empty space. So as soon as I identify with something, and one of the biggest things that I've had a couple of conversations with a really good friend of mine is, I mean, I've been a member of the LGBTQ. I mean, how many letters are there now? I'm not sure. And what I see is that a lot of people are saying, and even on their profile saying, I identify as this. And I'm like, well, I
Mm-hmm.
don't, I don't know why, but I'm not as attached to my pet peevishness about it as I once was before. Being a gay woman is such a small part of what this is, and my preferences. Obviously, it's a preference. But and we do it in so many different ways. We seek freedom, but
Everything.
we identify as a mother, identify as a sister, identify as a brother. Um, I identify, whether it's a religious faith or they identify as this, that, the other thing, and all of a sudden we're seeking freedom, but we've got a gazillion different boxes that we basically confined ourselves to and limited our potential and the possibilities that exist by doing so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And then that's the reprogramming I think that you were talking about.
Right. And so that identification is the oldest trick in the book of this matrix, this swamp, this control prison realm we're in. As long as you're identified, and it works basically by polarity again. So it's always been the two classes against each other, or the whites and the rich and the poor. It's always got to be a splitting. And then you identify with the one, well, yours is right. It's better. It's definitely better than the others. And so now that's where all conflict starts. And so it's the oldest trick. The latest variation of that is this identifying as all that you're saying. It's just the latest trap. It's just the latest model version of the trap system. It's new for 2023. There's always gonna there's always gonna be a new identification trap, of course. And as long as you're here, you're identifying. So similarly, I my whole thing is to deprogram. And when you're deprogramming, you got to loosen all of these, again, body oriented identifications. It's always about the body identity. If I'm just the body, well, I'm going to take pride in all of everything I do, my pride in my profession, pride in my social status, my people I know. It's all body oriented. But undoing that, it's like, no, I'm not the body, meaning I'm not identified as all of these things. And I'm actually, that spaciousness, the free spirit, that free energy that I am.
Yeah, one of
Mm-hmm.
one of the most interesting, and I think one of the most important lessons, if you will, that I learned, that was taught to me by both my maestros, ayahuasqueros, and Sadhguru, is that what I do, my so-called work, service, cannot mean anything to me.
To the
Because
little me.
if it means something to me, or I take pride in it, then it becomes about me and it's not about me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
and, and that was an interesting navigation for me, um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
6 years ago. Um, it's one thing. I look at it as offering myself in devotion. And if I think or feel that, oh, I did a great job or I changed someone's life, then it's about me. Or if I'm
Mm-hmm.
worried about, oh, did that ceremony, what happened? Was it me? If I do that, then it gets just tangled.
Yeah. Oh,
It
completely.
can't it can't mean anything to me. I show up, and a lot of times I'm who I who I call I, Carmelle, personality, identity, is back here watching. It's about surrendering to that flow and working with spirit and the divine, in a very different capacity from a different level of consciousness. It's
Yes.
not me. I am nothing without the spirit. Period. One of the first things that we learn with medicine. Nothing without the spirit. No thing. And we work with spirit in that way to come and help. It's about what we refer to as right relationship. It's a partnership with medicine that I call upon the medicine to come and help. It's not me.
Yes.
I've learned the Icaros and learned how to invoke and build that relationship with medicine so that it's a relationship and really spirit and the medicine is doing most of the work through
Hmm.
channel. Make me a channel for the divine. Use me as an instrument of the highest will.
Yes.
Um, and it's tricky.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, similarly, when I started offering, okay, public service, here we're going to do some gatherings and circles and meditations. So the Greg personality me was like, ooh, well, how do I do this? I'm a little nervous. I can do it. Guys, have confidence. I got to prepare and get my notes ready and have everything prepared. So that's the first approach. But then there is a internal higher power, an innate knowing, the flow, the spirit that knows everything, that's guiding everything. It wants to do everything for us and through us. So, okay, it's not, I'm not even here. So one of my foundational prayers always at the beginning is, I will step back right now and let you lead the way. And I don't have to do anything but be very present. I have to listen, just listening mode, actually listening to everybody. And then the spirit prompts and the next right thing to say, the next right thing to do. And it's always perfect that way. Always perfect that way. Everybody wins. Everybody has great experiences. I'm not interested in this for myself. That's not at all why I started this. And like with the labels and identifications, I could probably come up with a nice, good sounding resume and titles and even writing about myself. It's like, I don't care about that. That's not the point. So, am I a bioenergy healer and all these different labels? And do I have all these degrees in psychology? Well, yeah, historically I do, but I'm Greg. I'm just me. I'm just here. So, all the labels people want to attach to you and they build you up, and it's like, well, that's your story, but I'm just me. I'm just being present me. It works better that way. Keeps me out of trouble.
Just show it up, getting out of the way. It's what I one of the things that I'm really good at most of the time, and especially in ceremony, is just getting out of the way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. Oh,
Yes.
amazing! I'm sure we could go on for days and days
I
and
think we
days,
could.
and
Oh, wow, it's been an hour.
perhaps we'll have you back. I think that there's a lot. We've always had such amazing, fascinating conversations that go all sorts of places, and I'm just incredibly grateful that we both showed up today and shared this time and space and this consciousness together. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you. Yes,
Amazing.
thank you for making this opportunity available. I'm happy. I'm happy to flow in. And this is for, I mean, as we even discuss here privately, already the energetic ripples are going into the field. It's already helping people all across the globe unconsciously. You and I will never even know about it. But then, of course, we'll share it. People can hear it. So it's reinforcing hopeful, helpful, useful messages and ideas. Thank you for that. For on behalf of all of humanity, on behalf of the universe. Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much. What do we got for? Got it every 2 weeks. I was like, oh my God. See, it wasn't my idea to create this. And I resisted. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'm doing it every week. And all of a sudden I'm like, this is all I'm doing. So I'm posting every 2 weeks. I just thought I'd add that. Anyway, it was choiceless. It was kind of like doing medicine. It was a fun idea. Choiceless. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks.